What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Jaollie. You feel me? Uh, Today, what I'm saying? Want to give a little reaction video. I'm a big fan of horror myself. I'm saying? So I decided let's watch a little horror content. So we watching, horror movies inspired by true events. You know what I'm saying? I do eventually want to get some horror games and gameplay in the on the channel. You know what I'm saying? I love horror games, not so much. The jump scares. You know what I'm saying? That adrenaline. But we definitely gonna have some horror games coming to the channel. You know what I'm saying? If you know any that you'd want me to play, put it in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? I'll check them out. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, without further ado, let's get into the reaction. You know what I'm saying?
The Last Ritual. The Conjuring Last Rites closes out the Conjuring franchise in grand style, with Ed and Lorraine Warren facing one of the darkest cases of their lives. This time, they are called to investigate strange events in the Smurl family's house in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, in 1986. What starts with small noises and objects moving soon turns into something much more sinister. Doors slam shut on their own, voices whisper in the middle of the night, and the energy of the house seems to grow heavier and heavier. The
Me
Warrens
personally,
already
I like
experienced
all the Conjuring movies, but I have not seen this one. I'm gonna keep it on it. I have not seen this one at all. The Last Ritual, I've not seen this one. But like the Conjuring movies, they got the best jump scares, in my opinion. They do. But I think, to be honest, anything like Supernatural, those are like the best horror movies. You know what I'm saying? Those are the best ones. It's like, Jason's cool, Michael Myers cool, but them Supernatural ones got you rethinking life and shit. Like, why the fuck am I watching this shit? You know?
in dealing with the supernatural, quickly realize this is not a common spirit, but something evil, intelligent, and dangerous. In real life, the Smurl family's story began in 1973, right after a hurricane destroyed their old home. They moved into a new house, trying to start over, but soon realized something there wasn't right. Unexplained noises, strange smells, and terrifying voices took over the place. As the years went by, the events became more aggressive. The dog was thrown against a wall, one of the daughters was pushed down the stairs, and the patriarch, Jack Smurl, claimed he was attacked by an invisible entity. Not knowing what to do, the Smurls sought help from the church, but even exorcisms failed. That's when Ed and Lorraine...
Yeah, see this? This is some white shit, man. Like to be honest, like black household, bruh. It's not happening. It's not happening. I just can't. If this shit has anything doing with a black family and any of these like true stories, I'm ending the video after it. I'm ending the video. Yeah, I just don't see it. Ain't two events with some black people in it. You know what I'm saying? They just gonna say, "Fuck it, we living on the streets or some shit." You know what I'm saying? Like this only happening. You feel me? Like,
Warren entered the case and said they felt a cold, suffocating presence inside the house. Ed claimed he saw a dark mass moving on its own, and Lorraine felt something trying to enter her mind. The story became national headlines, dividing opinions between skeptics and believers. While some said it was nothing more than mass hysteria, others swore that something truly demonic lived in the Smurl house. Despite the Warrens' presence, they themselves never said the demon was expelled. At most, according to a local priest, the entity supposedly eased up after many intense prayers. Even so, peace was never complete. Janet Smurl said that in 1987 she could still hear knocking and see shadows around the house, as if something was still there.
So leave!
Tired, scared, and
this is not the only house on the block in the world! Leave!
To Wilkes-Barre and left the house behind. Over the years, the family tried to move on. The father, Jack Smurl, died in 2017 at the age of 75, and his daughter Karen, who became a paranormal investigator, said he was able to find a bit of peace after everything he went through. The old house ended up marked by its haunted reputation, which made it hard to sell or rent. Curiously, the new residents claimed they never saw anything out of the ordinary. Road of Fear. Wolf Creek is a movie that follows three young backpackers traveling across the Australian outback in search of adventure. They visit the Wolf Creek crater, a real and isolated location, but the dream trip turns into a nightmare when their car breaks down, and an apparently friendly man, Mick Taylor, shows up offering help. At first, he just seems like a typical outback local, with a calm manner and an easy smile. But when the young travelers accept a ride to his campsite, they discover the true hell. What follows are hours of torture, pursuit, and despair in the harsh landscapes of the Australian desert.
Little man, that's not gonna kill ya, right?
The scariest
Why you
part is that
selling
Wolf
that?
Creek was inspired by real stories. Director Greg McLean based Mick Taylor on two real killers, Ivan Milat and Bradley John Murdoch. Both became known for crimes committed against backpackers traveling alone on Australian roads between the late 1980s and the early 2000s. Ivan Milat was the most infamous. Between 1989 and 1992, he kidnapped and murdered at least 7 young people, including tourists from Germany and the United Kingdom. All were found in the bush, victims of brutal violence. Milat used to offer rides on the highways between Sydney and Melbourne, the same ones that inspired the movie's script. When police finally arrested him, they found belongings from the victims, such as cameras, backpacks, and clothing. Bradley John Murdoch, on the other hand, was convicted of the murder of a British tourist named Peter Falconio in 2001. The case also involved a chase and kidnapping on a remote road and helped shape Mick Taylor's sadistic and calculating personality. There is also a third figure who inspired part of the story, Paul Onions, a man who managed to escape from Milat in 1990. He noticed a gun and a rope inside the car, jumped out while it was moving, and ran away as Milat fired shots at him. Years later, when bodies started to appear, Paul recognized the killer and helped put him behind bars. The movie exaggerates and mixes everything, but the core comes from these events. Demon's body. Jennifer's body follows Jennifer, a popular girl who, after a ritual goes wrong, becomes possessed by a demon. From then on, she turns into a kind of succubus and starts devouring boys from her high school to maintain her strength. But what few people know is that many believe the movie may have been, at least in part, inspired by a real and extremely dark case, the murder of Elise Pellerin, a 15-year-old student from California, killed in 1995 in an alleged satanic ritual carried out by 3 schoolmates. Elise was described by everyone as creative, kind, and full of energy. She lived in a quiet town near the coast and studied at Arroyo Grande High School. There she met 3 teenagers, Royce Casey, Jacob DeLashmutt, and Joseph Fiorella, who spent their days listening to heavy metal and dreaming of having a successful band called Hatred. Fiorella, the youngest of the group, was 14 years old and took his taste for music to a dangerous extreme. He believed that the lyrics of the band Slayer contained real instructions for satanic rituals. Little by little, he started telling his friends that they could make a pact with the devil if they sacrificed a virgin. To him, Elise would be the perfect sacrifice. On July 22nd, 1995, the 3 called the girl and arranged a meeting in a eucalyptus grove. They said they would just talk and smoke. When Elise arrived, she was attacked. Fiorella stabbed her, DeLashmutt strangled her, and Casey helped hide the body under leaves and dirt. The girl remained missing for 8 months until Casey, overwhelmed by guilt, confessed everything to a pastor and led police to the crime scene. The case shocked the country. The boys claimed the sacrifice would bring power and...
Damn, like imagine just getting snitched out like that. See? That's why you gotta do everything. You're gonna do something bad, do it by yourself. At least, man. At least if you feel guilty, you turn in yourself. All because one out of the 3 felt guilty. Y'all gotta go down now. Man, I'll be mad. I'll be mad as hell.
Fame to the band, repeating ideas they said they took from Slayer's songs. Elise's family even sued the band, accusing it of inciting violence, but the case was dismissed. All 3 killers were sentenced to 26 years in prison. In 2025, almost 30 years later, Royce Casey and Jacob DeLashmutt were granted parole, while Joseph Fiorella remains in prison. The Evil Clown. It tells the story of a group of children who must face an ancient creature that feeds on fear and chooses the most terrifying form possible, a clown. In this universe, every 27 years, the creature awakens to hunt its victims in the town of Derry. But what many people don't know is that Stephen King's inspiration to create Pennywise came from a real killer who shocked the United States in the 1970s, John Wayne Gacy. He became known as the Killer Clown. Gacy seemed like the typical model neighbor. He was a businessman, took part in charity events, and was a member of the Democratic Party committee in Chicago. To boost his popularity, he created the character Pogo, a clown who entertained children's parties and visited hospitals dressed in colorful clothes and a painted smile. The problem is that behind this cheerful costume was one of the most brutal serial killers in history. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy abused and murdered at least 33 teenage boys. He lured his victims with promises of jobs, took them to his house, and attacked them in the basement. Many bodies were found buried right there, hidden under the floor, and others were dumped in a nearby river. The investigation began when one of the missing boys, Robert Peast, was last seen entering Gacy's house. When police searched the place, they uncovered a true underground horror. Stacked bodies, the smell of decomposition, human remains spread everywhere. The neighborhood, which had once seen him as a generous man, was in shock. During the trial, Gacy's lawyers tried to claim insanity, but evaluations showed he knew exactly what he was doing. Even so, he never showed any remorse. He spent 14 years on death row, painting pictures of himself dressed as Pogo and selling the artwork to collectors. In 1994, John Gacy was executed by lethal injection. The Perfect Daughter. Orphan begins as a story about starting over. Kate and
Oh, I
John
heard this
Coleman,
movie.
a couple
I never seen it
devastated
though.
by the loss of a baby, decide to adopt a 9-year-old girl. Polite, talented, and with a charming manner, Esther seems like the kind of daughter any family would dream of having. But something doesn't add up. Little by little, small accidents and strange behaviors make Kate suspect that there is something very wrong with that little girl. The big twist comes when we find out that Esther is not a child. She is actually Lena Clammer, a 33-year-old woman with a rare condition that makes her body look like that of a much younger girl.
Stop
Oh,
having
hell nah.
our stuff. She's dangerously ill, violent. She killed 7 people that we know of.
33 is
Behind the
crazy.
innocent appearance is a cold and violent mind. She tried to seduce the father and, if rejected, murdered everyone. It may sound like an absurd plot, but the idea came from something that really happened. The story resembles the Kuzum case, which took place in the Czech Republic in 2007. At the center of it all was Barbara Skrlova, a 33-year-old woman with a glandular disease that made her look like a teenager. She was part of a cult called the Grail Movement, a group that believed in spiritual purification rituals. Barbara infiltrated a family using a fake identity, pretending to be a 13-year-old girl named Anika. When police investigated a report of abuse, they
Man, that's a
discovered
black
that
man.
Sister
Y'all should have known that was her. Anika. That's black as shit. Come on. What? What?
Katerina Maurova were being manipulated by Barbara into torturing 2 children. The case came to light when a neighbor caught part of the abuse through a baby monitor. Barbara fled and even lived in Norway pretending to be a missing boy before being captured and convicted. The similarities to the movie are disturbing, and what's even more curious is that after the film's success, another similar story emerged. In 2010, Michael and Christine Barnett, an American couple from Indiana, adopted a Ukrainian girl named Natalia Grace. She had a condition that causes short stature. According to the adoption papers, Natalia was 6 years old, but shortly after, the couple began to suspect something was off. Christine claimed that while bathing her daughter, she noticed physical signs that didn't match the age. They started to believe the girl was actually an adult in disguise. The situation turned into a legal and media drama. In 2012, the Barnetts went to court and managed to change Natalia's birth certificate, moving the year from 2003 to 1989. Officially, the girl was now 22 years old. Soon after, the couple moved to Canada and left Natalia alone in a rented apartment in the United States. The case became a scandal. Years later, investigations and DNA tests proved that Natalia really was a child at the time of the adoption. Even so, the Barnetts were acquitted due to legal issues related to the official age change. The story gained even
Damn.
more attention with the documentary The Curious Case of Natalia Grace and the series Good American Family. In them, new details emerged. Natalia allegedly suffered abuse from the couple who took her in afterward, Anton and Cynthia Mons, who were accused of assault and of preventing the girl from using the internet. Today, Natalia lives with Nicole and Vincent DePaul, a couple with dwarfism who had tried to adopt her in the past. In recent interviews, she said she was a victim of lies and abuse, saying she just wants a normal life. Similarity between Natalia and the character from Orphan is striking, but unlike Leanna Clammer, Natalia Grace is still trying to prove to the world that her story is a real-life drama, not a horror story. Horror in Sleep. In A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, audiences were introduced to Freddy Krueger, a killer who attacked inside dreams, and whoever died in their sleep died for real.
Your big break in TV.
The idea seemed like pure fiction, but it had a much more terrifying origin. Before creating the movie, Wes Craven read a report in the Los Angeles Times about a young refugee from Cambodia. He had survived the atrocities of the Khmer Rouge regime and moved to the United States with his family. Even though he was safe, the boy began having intense nightmares. He told his parents that something was chasing him when he slept. He said that if he went to sleep, he would die. They tried to convince him it was just fear and even gave him sleeping medication. The boy refused. He stayed awake for several days, drinking coffee and hiding a coffee maker in his bedroom. When he finally couldn't take it anymore and fell asleep, he started screaming during the night. When his parents ran into the room, he was already dead. The autopsy revealed no apparent cause. Craven became obsessed with the case. The detail of the hidden coffee maker and the real fear of sleeping turned into scenes of Nancy, the film's protagonist, who does everything she can to stay awake to escape Freddy. The boy's terror directly inspired the creation of the Dream Killer. At the time, newspapers called this type of death sudden, unexplained nocturnal death syndrome, or SUNDIAS. Doctors noticed that the phenomenon mainly affected young, healthy men from Southeast Asia with no history of illness. They simply died in their sleep, often after reporting intense nightmares. Researchers later linked the syndrome to a hereditary heart condition called Brugada syndrome, but for many, the mystery still feels supernatural. The Cursed House.
I ain't gonna lie, I never knew that Freddy shit was based off something like that. That shit just always seems made up for real. But that is crazy. I had no clue that shit actually was based on something true. That's actually scary to think of.
The Amityville horror begins like a typical fresh start. George and Kathy Lutz buy a beautiful colonial house in New York, ready to house their family. But soon, the dream home turns into a nightmare. Doors slam shut on their own, windows open out of nowhere, and a dark energy seems to take over the place. George completely changes his behavior, waking up every night at 3:15 a.m., drenched in sweat and with a distant stare. Kathy starts seeing figures and hearing whispers. The children talk to imaginary friends who seem to
Oh
know
hell
the
no.
house's secrets. The terror keeps building until it becomes unbearable. The story that inspired the movie happened in November 1974, when young Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his parents and 4 siblings with a rifle while they slept in the same house in Amityville. When he was arrested, he said he heard voices telling him to kill. 13 months later, the house was sold to the Lutz family, who moved in without knowing, or pretending not to know, all the details about the place. They said the nightmare started on the very first day. Doors opened on their own. There were mysterious stains on the walls and even green slime dripping from the locks. George began waking up at the exact same time as the murders, consumed by a strange rage. A priest who tried to bless the house reported hearing a voice shout, "Get out," and never returned. The case gained worldwide fame and caught the attention of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. According to the Warrens themselves, the experience was heavy from the start. Lorraine said she had visions connected to murders and felt a very strong evil presence inside the house, something she described as oppressive and constant. Ed claimed he was pushed by an invisible force, which reinforced their belief that the hauntings were real and dangerous. They recommended that the place undergo an exorcism. Others believe it was all made up, including the Lutz's former lawyer, who said the story was created during a night of wine and laughter. In the end, the family left the house, the couple divorced, and to this day, some of the children remain traumatized, while one of them claims it was all exaggerated to gain media attention and money. Even so, the myth never died. Decades later, the house still exists, renovated and with a different number, but always carrying the same question: was the story really real? Possession on screen. Few movies have terrified people
Oh
as
no,
much as The
I don't know.
Exorcist from 1973. The film tells the story of Reagan McNeil, a 12-year-old girl who starts acting more and more frightening, and nothing seems to explain what's happening. Her mother, desperate, looks for doctors, psychologists, every kind of specialist, until the only option left is the spiritual path. 2 priests are called to face something that seems to go far beyond human understanding.
Who lives and reigns? Damien!
Amen.
God!
But what few people know is that this story was born from a real case that happened in 1949 in the United States. The thing is, in real life, Reagan was actually a boy. The boy became known as Robbie Monheim, or Roland Doe, a fake name used by the Catholic Church. At 13 years old, he lived a normal life in Maryland until an innocent gift changed everything: a Ouija board, which he got from his spiritualist aunt. After she passed away, the boy tried to communicate with her using the board, and that's when the chaos began. Soon, the house became the stage for bizarre things: noises in the attic, scratches on the floor, furniture moving on its own. Robbie also started to change his behavior, said he heard voices, and reacted violently to religious symbols. Doctors and psychologists tried to understand what was happening, but no one could explain it. The situation got so out of control that the case eventually reached the church. Father Edward Hughes performed the first exorcism, but his arm was seriously injured by the boy. The ritual was interrupted. Later, 2 other priests took over the case in St. Louis: Raymond Bishop and William Bodern. There were 30 days of
Why
exorcism.
that shit
During
popping
the
up so
sessions,
early,
the boy
man?
spoke in
You're still
ancient
talking.
languages, levitated, and even words like hell and Satan appeared marked on his skin. On the last day, Robbie reportedly woke up as if nothing had happened.
Hey. But anyway,
The
I
Cupid
guess that
face.
damn. Okay, sheesh. I guess that's it. Anyway, that's it, guys. Um, like I said, I want to have some horror games on the channel. If you guys have any recommendations, let me know. Um, this video was a little eye opener. You know what I'm saying? Learned some things new, like the Freddy Krueger thing. I really had no idea about. I really had no idea about that. That was actually surprised I didn't know that. That's how that story was made. It's pretty interesting. But the Freddy movies themselves, a lot of them kind of corny. Oh, not gonna lie. Well, I mean, it's based on dreams. So, dreams are weird. So, but yeah, if I made you smile today, chat, you know what I'm saying? Go ahead, subscribe to the subscribe button. You know what I'm saying? Mess with me. You know what I'm saying? And till next time, I guess. Feel me? Stupid.